have that comfort and expertise in technology and analytics, you can really focus on the human side. That's my theory of the case.
Welcome to Work Matters, where we explore what leaders can do to make work more productive, valuable, meaningful, and impactful. I am your host, Thomas Bertels. In this final episode of Season 4 of the Work Matters podcast, I'm talking to Dr. Anna Tavis about the future of work. Dr. Tavis is a clinical professor and chair of the Human Capital Management Department at NYU's School of Professional Studies. Prior to academia, she held senior HR leadership roles with Nokia, United Technologies, Motorola, and AIG. She is also the co-author of Humans at Work and the upcoming book, The Digital Coaching Revolution. In our discussion, we explore what the major trends are that will shape the future of work. What's the impact of AI on the workplace and society at large? How does AI change the role of the manager? And what capabilities will HR need to shape the future of work? I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Welcome to Work Matters, Anna. Nice to have you.
Delighted to be here and looking forward to this conversation again.
What do you see as like the major trends that will shape the future of work?
So I think we're continuing to solve the issue of the relationship between technology and humans at work. That's a macro horizon of where we're working today. But how organizations are going to be realigned in terms of everything from the skills that are going to be required to the organizational structure that needs to emerge to the processes that need to be built in to connect the dots between different activities, and finally what kind of culture will emerge out of this new dynamic that we're seeing at the intersection of, again, technology and humans. So lots of macro, really existential issues to talk about, but at the same time, very, very practical, down to earth questions of what kind of skills we need, who is going to have jobs, how jobs themselves are going to be broken into the component parts, and everything that has to do with HR will need to be figured out in the next few years.
How do you see AI changing the workplace? Maybe we can look at what it does to the HR profession and maybe how it might change how HR does its work, but also think how it more fundamentally will reshape the workplace.
I think fundamentally, we've never had a technology that could mimic intelligence, as it were. We had technologies that helped us to be more efficient, more productive, optimize productivity. From the Industrial Revolution up to November of last year, when these tools have become more accessible and available at the consumer level. But I think right now we are wrestling with an idea that our intelligence could be augmented. We could be not only more efficient, but we also could take performance to the next level of sophistication and replace, a lot of the functions that currently the majority of global populations are really involved in, and that's how they earn their living. So that's why I think this particular technology is qualitatively different, and questions of why, and how the humans are going to continue to work are becoming, from like the theoretical science fiction speculations, front and center day to day conversations that we're having in all of the societies of the world, both advanced and developing economies. So huge, huge challenges and opportunities in front of us. And I think we will need to solve for that dilemma.
When you and I talked earlier, when we connected, you also mentioned that this also opens the door to things that we didn't really have before. For example, a digital coach, right? Everybody could have a co-pilot, a digital coach at their fingertips.
I think one of the words that keeps coming up when we talk about AI is democratization. Democratization of a lot of functions that used to be reserved to the most senior executives, to the elite of the society, such as, assistants. Now with the evolution of technology, we have digital assistants that can support pretty much everyone, right? So from assistants, we move into coaching. Can everyone get a coach? Could particular functions in the workplace be replaced by totally automated agents? And so I think that democratization presents a lot of challenges for the traditional, very hierarchical, very stratified systems that we build in our organizations. If everyone has a coach and we are really going to be looking at the opportunities that are available to much greater numbers of humans, how are we going to process this in a society that, regardless of whether you're in a democracy or any other structure, are still based on expertise and hierarchies of seniority, etc. So I think that that is um, a big social, almost societal magnitude of an issue that we need to resolve. How about people who, could be completely, whose jobs could be completely replaced? And what are the societal obligations that, we have to the individuals who are losing their jobs? There were solutions traditionally, if you think about it, such as unionization. There was Social Security, unemployment benefits, etc. But they were all set up for very temporary unemployment periods. But thinking about displacing whole populations of workers, we need to be really mindful of how we are going to replace that source of income and what kind of society we want to live in. Again, something like interplanetary exploration is becoming more real in terms of, even though technology is not there yet, but thinking about colonizing the universe and spreading humanity across other planets, I think is becoming more of a daily conversation that we come across. So I think there are lots of interesting opportunities, but the point is that there's got to be a will and commitment to solve all of these problems on behalf of humans rather than on behalf of either a small minority of the elites or on behalf of the machines.
Yeah, I think I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to require more like a right stakeholder versus shareholder capitalism lens to come up with something that's acceptable for people. But I also imagine that this is really a sea change for HR, right? HR people traditionally, I don't think, see themselves as in this technology space. And there's a long history of HR being it's like heavily geared towards administration and compliance and right that obviously that model has evolved over the last decades, but I think AI is really changes the rules of the game. And so how does HR set itself up to be useful in the space? What capabilities do HR professionals need? And right? What advice would you give like an HR leader that says, okay, AI is coming, right? How do I get ready? How do I prepare my organization to really seize the space?
I think for HR, clearly, it is going to be a huge skills upgrade, and we've been talking about it for quite some time. But the good news for HR is that we we will leapfrog the need for having very tactical sort of technology skills. There needs to be definitely a sophistication of being able to review, assess, and evaluate the outcomes and results that the technologies will produce. But at the same time, critical thinking that we've been talking about for quite some time, scenario planning, ability to think forward rather than backward, I think that is going to be an absolute requirement for HR. HR traditionally looked back at, best practices, learning from others who have already done that. There's a lot of risk aversion that's been, kind of what HR has been known for. However, I think right now, being visionary in a sense and understanding the implications and playing that chess game of what's going to happen with these machines, with these technologies coming in, how is it going to affect the populations of employees that, the company is currently responsible for, um, and who are producing the current value of the product and service and whatever the company is in the market for. I think that kind of strategic workforce planning, ability to communicate based on the data that, again, technology will help collect and analyze, um, and help make decisions on behalf of humans is going to be absolutely critical, and NHI is uniquely positioned to be in that space. But clearly, we need to bring those skills front and center rather than reserve them for special situations when all of the transactional and compliance type of work is done.
What kind of changes do you envision? I mean, like if as a bold, right, a technology savvy HR leader, where would you go?
Let's take a use case here with performance. Performance is kind of at the center of any organizational functioning, right? And this is performance is what people are being evaluated for. You know, be, People are hired to perform. They're evaluated for the results, the outcomes of their performance, and they're being rewarded, compensated, and all of the benefits are provided based on their performance, including their career progression, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that the performance sits at the heart of what organizational people management is all about. And if you think of the introduction of smart, intelligent, artificially intelligent tools that do not require vacation, sick days, etc., and they're going to be available and supportive of the human performance in through the entire life cycle of that performance. So, what are these machines will be able to support us with? Number one is, definitely in help us clarify the goals, clarify outcomes, produce a number of scenarios by which those goals could be met. And, we will have to choose which way we're going to accomplish that. Um, so that we required of management to do all of these things, and ran into the capacity issue of a human being, unable to both be a producer of their own work and the coach for the entire team, no matter how many trainings we put humans through. imagine that a lot of the basic foundational tasks of coaching for performance will be generated by this intelligent agent who is going to help set goals, make sure, be kind of an accountability coach, make sure that the goals are met by asking the right questions, etc. And doing it all the time, 24/7, being able to um, adjust and um, adapt as the work product continues to evolve. Um, so, what will then come to be evaluated as performance? Lots of questions will arise from there. Number one, if you performed with the help of an intelligent machine, who is getting the rewards, right? How is it being accounted for? I think we still have a lot of questions around job sharing with an intelligent agent, right? Compensation, how are we going to be distributing rewards? Most compensation philosophy in companies is centered around pay for performance. Um, so if performance, and we know from data right now that over 50% and even more employees are using these machines to get their jobs done, and the majority of them are not disclosing that fact that they're using the machines, but eventually they will be. So how is that performance being accounted for? I think this is where the qualitative and fundamental disruption that will need to happen around organizational processes, structures, and tools that are going to change the face both of HR and the way work is being done in companies, in any organization for that matter.
It has like a brave new world feel to it, right? There's all these things that this general purpose technology could probably enable. At the same time, it also feels like that the workplace was probably never in a worse place in terms of right employee engagement, in terms of burnout rates of burnout. Right now, we're seeing like the whole return to office battle play out, but it feels like that's like those tensions are 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 even stronger than maybe what they were like right 5-10 years ago. I mean, it can't be ignored.
Yeah, I think we're in the transition period right now. I think we've been, before the pandemic, we kind of celebrated stakeholder capitalism. The Business Roundtable came out. It was all about engagement, employee experience, and we thought that this change will occur. That we are going to be looking at the environment. We're going to be looking at employee satisfaction and many different dimensions. And then the pandemic occurred, and I think that there was a big reevaluation from the employee perspective of what of the purpose of why they're working. And obviously we had the great resignations, etc. So there have been these very frequent swings in the sentiment in the workplace that is definitely defined by the external environment. And now we're sort of settling into the post pandemic situation where we've done experimenting with flexible schedule and realized that yes, it may be the way of the future, but at this point the pendulum swung sort of back, with a lot of companies requiring at least some a number of days, and I'm familiar with quite a few that require 5 days a week back to the same schedule. So I think we're seeing the swings, and I think the same we're going to see with AI. Right now, we are sort of infatuated with what it could do. very soon we are going to settle into the new normal with AI, and that's going to be the period of real adjustment, the real review, and we're beginning to enter that era right now, because it's been already a year since ChatGPT was out in the open, and the technology is continuing. But I think that this next phase is going to be about figuring out all of the details around how AI, at first, at the very basic level, is going to help us, including the coaching, the digital assistants, including, a lot of the software that's going to be built into our regular devices before even organizations jump into this game. But we're going to see this in the consumer environment, changing the skills, changing the expectations, changing the perceptions, and then it will come into the workplace. But it's an interesting period of transition where still a lot of questions are being asked, and it's a good place to be because right now we should be worrying about what questions we need to be asking rather than what answers do we have.
The critical gap that I see is really the ability of managers to make such smart work design decisions. And I'm just wondering what education leaders get to make smart, informed choices in this space.
This is where I sit in at the educational end of things, thinking about, how do we prepare the next generation HR professionals who come to us? They're already in organizations. Most of our students are employed, and they come to us because they are worried and they're excited, most of them, about the potential and for their jobs in HR, the future of HR. And from the educational perspective, I think this is where I think we need to really invest in developing HR professionals to be thinkers and visionaries and innovators and entrepreneurs. Those skills have not been the priority for most HR jobs. But right now, for example, in my own classes, I always start with some primer in entrepreneurship, product development, um, understanding of scenario planning and strategy, um, storytelling, ability to connect the dots from the data to the actual reality of the workplace, and be able to think into the future. Um, Again, this predictive capacity based on um, looking at patterns in data, recognizing, technological advancement, and even based on understanding of how it evolved before history. So I think all of that general knowledge then needs to be filtered into, so how do we do our jobs differently? Because I think that education for all is going to be really, really important, despite the fact that we are now really questioning the traditional model of higher ed that was very removed from the reality. I mean, we're in the professional education space, and I think that's where we're connecting the right dots between the actual practical experience and the ability to think strategically. At the same time, apply those skills and test them out in real workplace situations, and then go back and learn how to think differently, etc. Adjust your perceptions, adjust your concepts. I think that iterative way of approaching any skill, any process, and even strategy is going to be absolutely critical. And unfortunately, a lot of our colleagues who have been through the traditional HR pipeline have not been trained on this. So this is a priority for us right now, thinking out of the box rather than just copying and pasting into the right boxes on the spreadsheet.
I'm wondering if the HR function also at some point has to think about like how it's being structured and aligned.
There is a huge difference between organizations that really understand HR and those who, and it oftentimes sits with the senior management of their business management of their organization. Because in organizations that value HR, you see very different caliber of people who are in the HR functions. You see a very, very strong analytical component with people analytics teams. You see a different commitment to technology and innovation, um, and a really inclusion of HR in the decision making process about the business. And that is a differentiator, even at the business level. And some of the best examples of that, obviously we can go to technology companies like Microsoft, I think, is doing an exceptional job. I mean, everything they put out there to their clients, they test out internally. From the HR perspective, they're really innovative about their culture. And if you think about the types of talent, right, skills that they bring into their HR organization, they're very impressive. The other company I would point out, so that we don't just go to technology all the time, is Airbnb. Even though it's kind of a marketing and hospitality and travel company, it is a very strongly analytical and technology focused company that, if you have that comfort and expertise in technology and analytics, you can really focus on the human side. That's my theory of the case. If you are intimidated, if you are underinvested, you're going to not only lack that insight and knowledge, but you are also going to be very dependent on your vendors, very dependent on whoever is, better at marketing their tools to you. There's going to be a cacophony of different solutions, technological and analytical solutions for you. And oftentimes that becomes unproductive. And as a result, HR continues to carry that bad reputation because there's still a blind lead in the blind in terms of people management and organizations. So I think the differentiator for most companies and those who are positioned the best for the future are those who have those expertise on their HR teams, have their senior HR leaders who embrace and understand the importance of investing in their internal capabilities around those skills and apply them in their day to day HR practice.
I also know that you're working on a new book. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the book is about and when it's going to be available.
Thank you so much for mentioning it. In summary, the book is called Digital Coaching Revolution. And the whole idea there is very similar to what we've discussed, is about growing democratization and accessibility of such tools as coaching at all levels in organizations and beyond. And it was an exploration that came out of the series of conferences that we started to do at NYU, bringing together the innovators in the space of coaching and technology. And what we found was that coaching has come out of the closet, in a sense, in leaving it's still, remains to be kind of an elite tool for grooming senior executives. That's kind of how it became associated and launched in the latter part of the 20th century. However, if you think of the precedence of what we're seeing in the workplace right now, and we're looking at, and I specifically researched sports and healthcare, how coaching and technology has merged much earlier in sports. There's been huge investments, and we can't even think of any game or any performance, in a sense, at a senior level and even junior leagues and sports teams and in schools, etc., without the technology that allows them to monitor how they perform, monitor their health, et cetera, et cetera. And so the question then comes up, what's the role of the human coach? And what we are finding is that the human coach has not been outsourced altogether. There is a role for a human coach to play in exactly that kind of strategic team building, etc., coming in, looking at all the data generated by the tools that the athletes have access to on their own, but then getting that to the next level of perfection with a life coach. And it was very, eye-opening to me to think about how this particular model is going to translate into the performance in the workplace, where we're going to see the same, level of information to individuals about their particular performance and goal achievement in the workplace. But how will they translate it into the next level of innovation in their own performance, their next stretch goal, their career plans, et cetera, et cetera? That's where, the addition of the human coach will be, again, forward looking, will be really, really critical. So in that book, we examine exactly how this particular type of coaching going to be very much accepted and integrated into everything we do in organizations. And in addition to that, where we also saw um, democratization of coaching is going to be ubiquitous. It already is becoming so. Even if you want to be a good gardener, if you encounter any challenges when it comes to, your next Thanksgiving recipe, there will be available coach that you can access through your tools with the amount of information that will be delivered to the individual. And it's only at the level of interpretation that the coach will be engaged. But as far as the tools are concerned, the coaches and artificially intelligent agents are already becoming an inseparable part of how we do work, how we play, how we relax and enjoy leisure. And they're going to be built into our devices, and our homes are going to be smart um, with all of the assistance that we need.
I look forward to reading that book. I think it sounds really interesting. I'm also happy to hear that there's still going to be real life coaches there. Marshall Goldsmith and his colleagues are safe in their occupation, at least for the time being.
Yeah, and Marshall Goldsmith already created a bot for himself to kind of amplify what he does. But building on that comparison with sports, I actually look at the case of Ted Lasso and thinking about that particular, series and how, the human coach still holds this, the reins of the team. And as humans, we have a lot more fascination with that type of coach who is compassionate, empathetic, fun, and is really able to bring the team together.
So the machines are coming, but they're not yet right taking over completely. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Thomas. It was a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, be sure to subscribe, like, share, or comment. Until next time, let's make work matter.